Prior to 1972, laws were still in effect since the 1880s that made any information about birth control lewd and offensive. These Comstock laws made mailing, distributing, or advertising any forms of birth control illegal. Margaret Sanger is famous for starting the fight for reproductive freedom, founding Planned Parenthood, and coining the term birth control. In the 19-teens, her views that women should be able to enjoy sex without having to worry about unwanted pregnancy was considered barbarous. She was arrested for giving speeches on how women should enjoy the right to choose when they have children, how many children to have, and providing methods for women to do so. It would be almost half a century before another major turning point in the reproductive rights battle would occur. By legalizing contraceptives, Eisenstadt v. Baird, 1972, created a critical turning point in the advancements of women's rights. Prior to 1972, women relied on douches filled with Lysol, male-controlled withdrawal, and a crude version of the rhythm method. The failure rates were high, and with abortion only being legal in the event to save the mother's life, coat hanger abortions were common, as were the deaths caused by them. In 1965, the Supreme Court case of Griswold v. Connecticut legalized birth control for married individuals, but could only be by prescription from a doctor. Rich women could travel to countries where abortion was legal. This left the unmarried and the poor still relying on rudimentary contraceptives and dangerous backstreet abortions. During this time period, a young William Baird was working for a birth control manufacturer and was conducting research in a Harlem hospital.
I was clinical director for a drug company called MCO, which makes birth control products. And while at a hospital in New York City, I heard a woman scream. And like anybody else, I ran into the hospital corridor to see what was going on. And I saw a woman covered with blood from the waist down, and she was staggering. And obviously, I raced to help her. And as I caught her as she slumped to the ground, I noticed she had an 8-inch piece of wire coat hanger embedded in her uterus. And that woman died. And it so angered me that we lived in a nation that not only did this poor woman not have the right to an abortion, but many of your viewers have no idea that she didn't even have the right to birth control. In 1963, in most parts of the United States, birth control...
Baird then went on a crusade. He turned an old UPS truck into a traveling birth control clinic and traveled around, distributing foam and condoms to those in need, focusing on areas such as Harlem. This got him fired from his job. Each woman he helped could carry a 10-year prison sentence, and on May 13, 1965, he was arrested for exhibiting and publicly teaching methods of contraception. A short time later, New York voted to repeal the laws he was charged with violating before the Supreme Court case could vote on whether they were constitutional. This was his first court victory. A year after he had been arrested, he was appointed to the Joint Legislative Committee on Health and Mental Hygiene, the group responsible for creating new birth control regulations. In 1966, Baird was arrested in New Jersey for challenging a birth control statute there. This resulted in his second court victory. His largest battle, however, wasn't until 1967, when he received a petition signed by almost 800 students from Boston University, asking for his help to overturn a Massachusetts law dealing with crime against chastity, morality, decency, and good order. This law made distributing information regarding birth control a felony, punishable by 5 years in prison. On April 6, 1967, to a crowd of about 2,500 people at Boston University, Bill gave a speech about birth control, abortion, women's rights, and overpopulation. During the speech, he handed condoms to an unmarried female student and was promptly arrested. Baird was charged with committing crimes against chastity. Being arrested was part of an elaborate plan, which didn't quite work out at first. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case, forcing Bill to carry out his sentence at the notorious Charles Street Prison, which hosts mostly rapists and murderers. March 22, 1972 was a critical turning point when Justice William Brannon stated, If the right of privacy means anything, it's the right of individuals, whether married or single, to be free from unwarranted government intrusions on matters so fundamentally affecting a person as this decision to bear or beget a child. The next year, Eisenstadt versus Baird was cited numerous times in the more famous Supreme Court case, Wade versus Roe. Since 1972, Eisenstadt versus Baird has been cited hundreds of times. It has helped the U.S. court system define our constitutional right to privacy. Outside of the courtroom, it has made an impact on women's daily lives. Pregnancies are now able to be well planned in terms of age spacing, and families now have control over the number of children they have. Women are now delaying pregnancy to focus on their careers. Baird continues fighting for reproductive freedom.
He bought a band with all he had and set about to spread the word. When just a mention of prevention was illegal to the herd.
Recently, conservatives have tried to overturn laws legalizing birth control. Women's rights were a major issue in the presidential debate, and protests from both pro-life and pro-choice organizations are still common. In an era where in vitro fertilization, surrogate mothers, semen and egg donations, and other technologies make it possible for pregnancy to not be synonymous with sex, there is still a battle waging on if sex should be synonymous with pregnancy. Who wins that battle will forever change couples' control over family planning. The Eisenstadt versus Baird case is just one of many turning points in the battle of contraceptives. From the Comstock laws in the late 1800s vilifying birth control, to Wade versus Roe legalizing abortions, laws concerning reproductive freedom is constantly shifting. Development of the pill and IVF have added fuel to the flames. With this constant shift of laws and technology, the right to bear or beget will forever affect our society.